tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
And in today's Hot Takes, Akiko, we got to discuss quite a bit here because we got a long list of incentives now racking up across the country when it comes to incentivizing Americans to get vaccinated. Of course, we highlighted one of the tastiest incentives, Krispy Kreme, giving free donuts to anyone who could show their vaccine card. We highlighted that with the CEO of Krispy Kreme right here on the show. But a couple other incentives to note here, including New York raffling off 50 full college scholarships in New York for kids who get vaccinated ages 12 to 17, and also Ohio's first $1 million winner in their Vax-A-Million lottery for people who get vaccinated. So, Kiko, I mean, the incentives are stacking up, which makes me feel bad because, you know, I did it before we got all these things.
But that's a cynical look, right? I mean, Zach, you and I got the vaccine without any incentives. And here we are talking about either $1 million or a free ride to college. It's interesting when you look at the Ohio numbers, because you could argue they kind of started this trend with other states following in on their incentives. More than 2.7 million adults signed up for that $1 million prize. More than 104,000 kids, 12 to 17, entered for the college scholarship. My question is, which is the better incentive? The $1 million or the free ride to college? Because we've seen other states follow in Ohio's footsteps.
Yeah, and you got to adjust for the odds. You got to do net present value. There's a lot of calculations there to do which one's best. I would give the shout out to New Jersey for being on brand there with their shot and a beer combo when it comes to getting a free beer for getting the shot. I think brand value also matters here too. And I'm not sure what that says about Ohio and their love for lotteries or other states out there in theirs. But you're right. Maybe it's cynical to be focused in on the incentives as a negative, but you got to wonder. I mean, it kind of incentivizes you to wait and see what else you can get. So maybe you wait a little bit longer to say, what's in it for me? But kind of strange that we even have to do this, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the president has said he wants about 70% of the population vaccinated by July 4th. Still well off of that when you look at the national numbers. I think I'm with you in that $1 million sounds great, but when you think about the odds, is that really the incentive that gets people to get the vaccine versus a guaranteed free beer, free donuts? I feel like the food, drinks always have the better incentive. One state that I thought was a little creative was Maine. They are offering free fishing licenses and LL Bean gift cards, which I would argue is very Maine. But obviously they're putting that forward because they think it's an attractive offer.
Yeah, that might edge out New Jersey for being even more on brand there. But I mean, all of these things clearly, they're all meant for the right reason when it comes to driving people to get vaccinated out there. But I don't know what that says about me, who was just in line for the donut. I mean, having Krispy Kreme donut was enough to get me on board. But I mean,
but you get it for the full year. You get it for the full year. It's not just one donut.
Yeah, you can go back as many as you want. And yet I still haven't gone in yet because that's just, I guess I'm lazy that way. But I mean, it's working too, right, Akiko? I mean, all of these things are working when you think about where we're at in the pandemic and President Biden's goal of 70% by July. We're on pace, right? So, I mean, things are working.
Yeah, and if you look at Ohio's numbers, they've said that vaccination rates jumped about 33% when they started this campaign. There's more millions to be given out. They're giving out another scholarship as well. So the thinking, at least in that state, is you have to keep this going because just like we've seen with other vaccines or other states, their numbers ticked up when the campaign was launched, but then it kind of tailed off. And so, I mean, maybe those who are holding out for better incentives, that may be a better game plan. But we should say that health experts we've had on say just go out and get vaccinated. No incentive needed. I think, just go out and get vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vaccine stats speak for themselves. That should probably be the most important incentive, I suppose, there in terms of the health impacts and the safety around all that for your loved ones.
Thanks all of you for being here. I think I'll direct this to Dr. Fauci, but I welcome everybody's answer. I just want to go.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. It's the last day of the month, May the 31st. We got lots of stuff that happened this weekend that we will be discussing and talking about. So I trust that all of you had a fantabulous weekend. I did. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Let me see who is here with us bright and early. Marshall is the first one out of the barn. Good morning, Marshall. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Monday to you. Marshall's in North Carolina. Are you in the same time zone as us, Marshall? I kind of feel like North Carolina, half the year is in our time zone. Elizabeth Moya is here. Buenos dias, Elizabeth. ¿Cómo estás? Bienvenido. Evelyn is always here. She's like a top fan. Do you still have your top fan badge, Evelyn? If you don't, you need to talk to Facebook because you definitely earn yours. Olivia is here. Good morning, Olivia. How are you? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've got Leanne. Punctus, good morning. Jackie is here. Louis joining us from Detroit says good morning, Sandy and CMRT timers. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Mr. K-Man Vlogs is here. Mr. K-Man Vlogs, aren't you normally on YouTube? I think I normally see you on YouTube, right? But regardless of how you join us, good morning, my dear. Thanks for logging on. Good morning to Charm, Felicia, Maria is here. Miss Donna is here. I trust, yes, that everyone had a great weekend. Louis says, so glad to be here this morning. Thank you, Almighty God. Oh, we are always grateful because trust me, there are no guarantees in this world. You just never know from one minute to the next what is going to happen or what's going on, or you just never know. So yes, always, always, always be grateful. We've got Barbara who's joining us on YouTube. Thank you, Barbara. Miss Anne Marie is here. Sarah and Sabrina are both here. Judy, good morning, Judy. I'm going to talk all about my vaccine experience. In case you guys missed it, I got vaccinated on Saturday. And yes, there is a lot to talk about. Miss Corrine, good morning, my love. How are you? Miss Corrine says to everybody to have a fabulous week. Siobhan, thank you so much. Marshall's an hour ahead. Okay, gotcha. No worries. Good morning, Miss Bonnie. She's watching us on YouTube. Miss Bonnie, are you watching through the streaming stick, or are you still doing it from your phone? Who else have we got? Alicia is here. Good morning. Rosie. Yes. Irvin holding on to that top fan badge, she says. Good morning to Julie. Oscar, are you out of quarantine yet? Oscar was returning from a little vacay. Thank you so much. Mr. K-Man Vlog says, I am. Always a pleasure. Thank you. We appreciate the love and support. So let's get into it. What an interesting weekend. Where do we begin? Well, let's start with talking about, I'm trying to clean my glasses. They're like a hot mess this morning. You know, I've worn glasses before. And then many years ago, I had LASIK surgery. And I didn't know at the time, I wish somebody had told me, but I guess it probably wouldn't have mattered, that LASIK surgery doesn't actually last forever. I thought it was a permanent thing, but you know what I've learned? That number one, nothing in life is permanent. Good morning, Miss Morna. Hello, Nikki. Oscar's almost out. All right. Gigi, Jennifer, Richie. Yes, Miss Catherine is here. Oh, she's watching it from her phone. She's still watching it from her phone. Louis says he's gotten top fan status now. Wow. That's awesome. So apparently, Miss Beulah, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but nothing in life is permanent. And trust me when I say that that certainly applies to things that you do. I got this one little hair piece that just wants to stick up and be strange this morning. Look at that. Just doesn't want to lie down and behave. Yeah, so nothing in life is permanent. This is a bit of a fact. And apparently that includes LASIK surgery. So years ago, when I was in law school, I did LASIK surgery. I used to be, my eyesight was really bad. It's far worse then than it is now even. And, you know, I couldn't even see the alarm clock next to me in the morning. That's how bad it was. And so I was just like so over glasses. I have an allergy to metals. So I'm not a person who can wear costume jewelry, for example, because my skin doesn't do well. And so I'll break out. And it doesn't even have to be long-term use. Like literally, I wear it for an evening out and I start to get irritation like around my neck if it's a necklace or something else. So I just don't bother. I don't buy any costume jewelry. I don't wear anything that's fake because it just isn't worth the hassle, right? So my glasses, this is how I first discovered this allergy really, is that my glasses were the exact same way. So anytime I would get, when I was wearing glasses, I would get metal frames anywhere that they touched me, like on the sides or my nose, or even sometimes your glasses might just gently touch like underneath your eye area. I would get like it would just interact with my skin and not in a good way. So I discovered that it's the alloys in these metals that I'm actually allergic to. And so I couldn't actually wear any glasses that, were not a plastic frame. And back in the day, this would have been like early 90s, I think is when I first started wearing glasses. There weren't a whole lot of options in terms of plastic frames. I think they had a lot of metal back then. I don't know why. But I was always breaking out and I was literally going bald like on the sides, or it would touch my skin. And it was just a real hot mess of a situation. So when I decided to do LASIK, I went all through university being tortured by this and moved back to Cayman and went to law school. And I think it was in my second year in law school that I was like, okay, I need to save up some of my little money. I was working full time at Maples. And I was like, I need to save some money and I just need to get this done. So that's what I did. And literally to this day, it is probably one of the best things that I've spent money on. It was so well worth it. And, I would sit there and, you go over all the pros and cons with the physician. You see if you're a good candidate. You have to wait until your eyes settle down. So your eyes don't, you have to make sure that you do it when your eyes haven't changed in so many years. And there's a whole list of things that they go over with you and they talk about the pros and cons of the procedure. So obviously they use a laser on your eyeball and they lift the lid and essentially they reshape it. And then they put the lid back down. And back then there was a number of different procedures. Laser was relatively new. And so there were other things that they would do in terms of trying to correct your vision. But I said to myself, you know what? Laser is where it's at. Let's just do it. And I remember the doctor or somebody said to me, I don't know if it was a doctor, but somebody said to me, there's always with any surgery, a small chance of infection or something going wrong or whatever. And I thought, yeah, I was trying the whole, what's it called? Contact lens thing that wasn't working for me because I do have an astigmatism, which makes it very, very difficult to deal with contact lenses. And it was just a whole mess. So I thought, but then I thought, right, if I'm wearing contact lenses, I'm trying to do that even a couple times a week, literally my finger is in and out of my eye, all the time, that versus a couple seconds, 15 seconds with a laser. I'm thinking the chances of getting an infection is probably greater with me just constantly sticking my fingers in my eye. Good morning, Vernita. How are you? Larry's locked in from New York. Oh, yes. Happy Memorial Day, Larry. I forgot that was today in the US. Big travel holiday. So, yeah. So anyway, I did the procedure. One of the best things that I have ever done, ever. I absolutely loved it. And it's done well. The problem is nobody told me at the time that, oh, this doesn't last forever. I was just thinking it was going to last forever. But my point this morning is nothing in life lasts forever. Honestly, life doesn't even last forever. There's nothing that does. So it lasted a good while. And when I went the other day to see about finally getting glasses, the optometrist said to me, you've actually done really well with LASIK because normally it doesn't last this long. And I said, really? She said, yeah. And she told me what the average was. And she's like, you've gone over the average, so you've done well. So I thought, can I just go get it done again? But because now I have aged and I'm at a certain age and the eyes are different. And, once you've had it done once, it's not quite the same in terms of doing it again. So unfortunately, having it redone is not recommended. I mean, I'd have to really be in a small category of persons who would foot the bill for that. So yes, I will just try to be happy with glasses. I must say, however, just from what I've noticed is that the selection of glasses that are available now, designs in plastic, have increased significantly. There's just more variety. So I'm able to, get a plastic frame that isn't going to irritate me as much as a metal frame. So that's some good news. And yeah, there you have it. Nothing in life lasts forever. Even if you get braces, those of you who've had braces, I've had braces. Good morning, Brandon. Are you aware that even with braces, you go and you spend thousands of dollars to get your teeth straightened out, and you think, oh, great, I'm going to have this $1 million smile forever. Well, as it turns out, I've had to do braces twice now, because if you do not wear your retainer, your teeth move right back to where they were. That's your body. Your body always wants to go back to this like setting point, including your mouth, including your teeth, and I guess your eyes as well, will kind of revert back. Thankfully, we have not had a whole lot of like, it's not worse than it was before, I should say. Let me just put it that way. All right, so let's talk about the weekend. On Friday, you guys would have seen that obviously I was in court, and the robbery trial, the jury was essentially released, and they were forced to leave, and it will start over in September. We can't say why. I obviously know why, because I was there, but I cannot say why. As media, there's a certain degree of responsibility that is placed on my shoulders. And I don't know if after the trial is over and done with and everything is finished, if I'm at some point permitted to say why, but definitely at this point, even the jurors have been informed that they are not in a position to say why and what happened. Well, they don't know what happened, actually, because they weren't there. So there's certain legal arguments that happen in the absence of the jury. And I learned on Friday that apparently when those things happen, we as media can't report on that, because I guess in a way it makes sense, because then the jurors have the possibility of going back and reading what happened in their absence. Hadn't thought about it, but we're not permitted to report on those things. And so all I can tell you is the trial has been vacated. And as a result, it will start all over again in September is the anticipated start date. So the jury was discharged on Friday. They were explained to not talk to anybody about the case. If you know anyone who was a jury, don't talk to them about it. They're not permitted to talk to anyone, and no one should be talking to them about the matter either, because it will be another jury trial. And I guess the jury pool in Cayman is relatively small. I am still of the opinion that we need to consider actually sequestering jurors for a number of different reasons. And I think it would allow the process to just move forward a little bit quicker, eliminate any possibility of the jurors, like that excuse being used, that someone can't get a fair trial, et cetera, and, running into any issues. Sequester the jury, lock them down. Simple. I think if that's the case, they should pay you a little bit more money, because you're going to be away from family and other things. But, in Cayman, we're just not ready for that yet. So unfortunately, I don't realistically see that happening in our future. But I think that that's one easy way to even quickly move through the process. But there you have it. Jurors are allowed to go home. And when they go home, you assume that they're not going to do certain things. And so there you go. So we can't really talk much more about it. The jury has been discharged. And I just want to say that, we all need to be careful going forward to ensure that we are, as a media house, upholding our legal responsibility in terms of fair reporting the facts, especially once a trial has started, and nothing more and nothing less, I suppose, at the end of the day. So let's move on. In addition to oh, this is good news. Thank you so much, Richie, for sharing that. In addition to that, on Saturday, we had a number of events going on. So I finally decided to just bite the bullet and go and have my, ooh, yikes. Go and have my, my vaccination finally done. Now, I had always intended, I think if you guys have been paying attention to this program, you would know that I had always intended to have mine done. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I was going to do it with the PAC members when they went in. However, because 2 days before that, I had to have, and it wasn't much of a choice, I had to have this, what's it called? The steroid shot, not only directly in the shoulder, but also in my elbow in the exact same arm. It was advised that I should wait to have the COVID injection because it would be going in that exact same arm. So I must say that whilst the, again, nothing lasts forever kind of theme here this morning, once and you know, the irony of the shot, the, what was it? Literally my brain just went ploop. The irony of the steroid shot in the shoulder is that the shoulder one, it wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't like super painful. It was bearable. I was like, okay, you know. The physician, he's a orthopedic surgeon, said to me, you have to be really careful not to touch the bone. And when a physician says that to you when the needle's in there, you're like, oh my God, don't move. Whatever you do, don't move, because that sounds painful. That someone could actually, with a needle, as thin as that needle is, that someone could be so close to your bone that they could like legit nick your bone. And then, ew, that just doesn't sound pleasant. So I was like, now you tell me that that's a possibility? Oh my God, just hold still was what I was telling myself in my head. I was just like, do not move. Under any circumstances, don't move. So I was just holding tight, like, Then he says, okay, so now we're going to go into the elbow. And I thought, okay, I'm thinking the elbow might have had a little bit more cushion in it. I don't know why I thought that, and it wouldn't be as painful. The elbow was the worst, I assure you, without a doubt. It was painful. And so he said, you know, lie down on your side, because the other one I was kind of sitting up on the table. And he said, for this one, you might want to lie down on your side because, you know, it'll be easier for me to get in there with the needle. I thought, okay. Anyway, I was like lying down on my side. The nurse was right there. And when he started, I grabbed onto the nurse. I tell you no lie. I grabbed onto the nurse and I was squeezing her little arm. Poor her. She's like, it's okay. Because number one, it lasted a really long time. You know, some injections, especially when they go in there with, like, I've had steroid shot in my ankle before. He had to go in there and they actually have to like kind of maneuver the needle around. And sometimes they prick in more than one area in order to put that steroid liquid where they think the inflammation is or whatever is going on to try to help settle that area down. Now they've discovered that giving steroid shots with certain things, such as in the knee, is probably not the most beneficial thing to the patient long term. So when he was doing my elbow, legit, that hurt. And it took what seemed like forever for that needle to come out. So he was taking his time, squeezing the steroid solution in. And it's like I could feel it going into my elbow. I mean, it was just painful. And it felt like forever, but it was probably 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds max. But it was a lot longer than the shoulder for sure. So I kind of grinned and buried it by holding on to that poor nurse's arm. And yes, I don't think I've never met a person who said that they like needles. I don't think anybody likes needles. I think that's a natural phobia to probably have. So I then decided, all right, this was the weekend. June the 9th is the deadline for getting the vaccine. So you've got a little bit more than a week. So a week from Wednesday to get your first shot. And then after that, whatever vaccine is unused for the first shot part of it will have to be thrown away because it does have a shelf life. And remember, there's a whole lot of things with this vaccine being kept at a particular temperature and transport. And, some people was like, oh, send it to the BRAC and all these other things, or, give it away to somebody else. There's certain things that cannot happen in terms of transport because of the particular storage requirements of this vaccine. So we have it here. And unfortunately, it is what it is. They're trying to amp up and do as many vaccine clinics and different locations. They're even going to the beach on the final day, which is the 9th. So if you're out there in the evenings, they're trying to catch everyone. So obviously, I have always said to get it. That video that we were watching this morning about the lottery in the US, a lot of these guys are saying, listen, they did it before lottery was necessary, or not necessary, but before a lottery was implemented. So there was no need for some people to be incentivized in that way. My intentions were to always do it. I didn't need to personally be incentivized as a result of even the local drive that they're having. I think what you need to really ensure that you think about, number one, in the US, say the Ohio lottery, what are the chances of you winning $1 million? There are millions of people that live in Ohio. So the chances of you even winning $1 million are literally slim, like very slim. But if that's enough of, an incentive for some people, just the thought that you could win something, although the likely chances is really, really crazy because people now go out of their way to get the vaccine, knowing that the chances of winning a prize are slim to none. But in your head, and this is part of being human, I guess, in our heads, we think, oh, right, this is a great thing. Who knows? So whatever motivates you, I don't personally care what motivates you to get it. I think, do your research and get it done. Like I did my research in terms of the health benefits and the benefits, not just personally to myself, but to this country and the world as a whole. Being able to get back to some semblance of normalcy requires that we all do our part. And you know what is so amazing is that people in this day and age are so incredibly self-centered. I think there was a time when, people used to think about country, like during war times and this sort of thing. They thought about country first, and they did everything in their power to put their country first. Now we are so incredibly just selfish, I guess is the right word, that we don't think about country first. Everybody's concerned about themselves. And what that sometimes means is that in our rush to think about ourselves and nobody else, I do believe that sometimes we're making decisions. Buenos dias, Miss Alba. We're making decisions that aren't always entirely logical, because I think to myself, had we lived through a very different situation, even with COVID, a lot of the naysayers that I know, so here's the vaccine schedule in case you need it. A lot of the naysayers who were, out and about saying, oh, don't do it, every single potential possibility, no matter how rare it is, that someone might have had a reaction to it, they're jumping on those stories. They're not jumping on the stories that show that the vaccine works, right? They're not jumping on the Bermuda stories that say, listen, we've had a resurgence of the vaccine, but guess what? The people of the virus, sorry. But guess what? The people who've been vaccinated have done really well. They're not the people who are landing in the hospital. They're not the people who, by and large, are getting severely sick. So in other words, the vaccine is working. It's given people the protection that it claims that it would. And transmission rates are down. I think in the US right now, the lowest that it has been since the virus has emerged. So none of this information is being disseminated by the naysayers because they don't want you to think about that. So in the US, for example, the rate of new COVID cases has hit a 1-year low. And they are approaching being on target for what President Biden was pushing for by July 4th of having 70% of their population. I think it's their adult population. But now that kids are eligible for it, a lot of kids have been getting it as well. But yes, having 70% of their people fully vaccinated so that they can try to start reopening. So that's good news for the US. Half of the US population currently has received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine ahead of the Memorial Day weekend, because this is a big travel weekend. Right now, a lot of Americans are traveling. And so this is helping to push the rate of new coronavirus infections to its lowest level in a year. That's a big deal. So more than 166 million Americans have now received their first dose of the vaccine, equivalent to 50.1%. Biden had a very ambitious plan, but it looks like, based on all news reports, that they are on target. And let's be honest here, these lotteries and giveaways, they're giving me everything from beer to $1 million, Krispy Kreme donuts. Here in Cayman, we're doing, Burger King burgers, whatever it takes. These vaccine drives, which include giveaways, are working. And so when I see people, thump their noses at it, no, well, why are we incentivizing people? The reason why we are incentivizing people, folks, is because it works. How about that? It's just a simple, logical answer. If something works, you do it. You know what I mean? So it works. Ta-da! And the numbers here are on the uptake as well. But there's still a lot of people who are sitting back waiting for only God knows what. I guess they're waiting for all the rest of us to drop down dead first. And then they go, oh, you see, I told you so. But that's not happening. And in the meantime, these people are taking a significant risk, not only with their own lives, but with, and I want to read an article to you guys. I thought that this was very, very interesting. Not only with their own lives, but with everybody else's health and well-being as well. And this concept of, well, I'm going to do what I want to do because it's my life and my body, there has to be a certain limitation to that. Now, I read a very interesting article in the New York Times over the weekend. Just yesterday, I was reading this article, and I want to share it with you guys in part because I thought that it was very, very interesting. Let me just see here if I can get this off of the phone. So, you always have people who don't believe in vaccines, despite the fact that they themselves have actually been vaccinated from when they were babies and they're still alive and they're still kicking and doing the most. But despite that, they will say that they don't believe in vaccines. They may not even be here had it been for vaccines. I mean, that's the irony of it. And I still maintain that although the previous government did a fairly good job of containing the virus, we only had 2 deaths that we're counting towards this. At the end of the day, I wonder if maybe, and I know this is going to sound absolutely horrific, but maybe we did too much of a good job. And why I say that is this. Had we lost a few people, now this is absolutely horrible, but this is the reality of how human beings are. And this is how we think. Had we had some local people die, people that were connected, that your family members, whatever, you would be more motivated, without question, if you're not one of those naysayers, you would be more motivated to go out and get the vaccine had your aunt died, your mom died, your sister died, somebody that in this community died as a result of COVID. But because we have been so insulated, and it was fairly easy for us to do that because of a number of factors, but because we have been so incredibly insulated, that now gives these vaccine naysayers, they're entitled to their opinion, but they're giving a little extra boost in the minds of some people because we've not really been through it. We've not had a complete collapse of our economy. We have not had people dying left, right, and center. You think people in India who are so inundated with death right now, like they don't even have enough ground space because they don't really bury people. They cremate for the most part people, right? They don't even have enough ground space at the crematorium to just lay people down and to burn them. Think about that for a second. The devastation of death has a way of motivating people in the right direction. It's kind of like with our own health. The doctor's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. You're hitting that magic middle age now where you need to lose weight and you need to start exercise and all this kind of stuff. Most of us aren't going to do anything. We're like, okay. We're going to diet for a week, exercise for a week, and then we feel good. We're like, oh, I'm done. When you have that first heart attack, if you survive it, right, then you go, oh my God, now I need to take it seriously because there's no returning from death. When you have a stroke, you're more likely, when you've had a traumatic event, to do the right thing. But you know what's amazing is even then, there are people who will still not do what they need to do in life. And it is just human beings. I mean, I don't know what else to say. So Evelyn agrees. Thank you, Larry. Lily agrees. Daisy saying people in DR are having a really rough time with this. I mean, there are a lot of people in the world who are suffering, but we are so removed from that suffering. I'm actually surprised at how few people living here in the Cayman Islands even watch international news. Y'all don't even know what's going on around the world. That's why sometimes I just stick something on the show to kind of show you. But if you saw the devastation that is happening in places like India, like how devastating this virus actually is, it's not a joke, folks. And, I think that unfortunately Caymanians don't get it. We have been living in a little bit of a bubble. The fact that even COVID patients, if they survive, they still have all of these long-term, a lot of them, long-term illnesses. People are like, oh, I'm going to take my chances. I'm like, you're going to take your chances, not of just being killed from COVID. That's one thing, right? But even if you're not killed, you're going to take a chance of having a long lifetime now illness on top of whatever else you might have had. If you were diabetic or whatever else, high blood pressure. Okay, that was bad enough. Now you are willing to take a chance on having a long-term illness that you can't afford. You're going to be burdening the system here, the insurance system for all of us in this community because you're afraid to get a vaccine. But you're not afraid of getting COVID. You're not afraid of dying, obviously. And I think to myself, the reason for that is that we are a little bit too comfortable. Do you know in the UK, they're still looking at a potential lockdown again? They're saying that the COVID cases remain uncomfortably high. So Glasgow remains on lockdown. And they may be looking at locking down other areas in the UK again. I've lost count of how many times they have now been locked down, but trust me, it's like way too many. So, I just find it amazing when people use these illogical arguments to try to justify their decision. Now, I was telling you about this article in the New York Times, and I'm going to put the link in here, but I want to read you part of this, right? So the title of this article says, is it okay to ask healthcare providers if they're vaccinated? Now, this is an interesting question. So this was done by the magazine's ethicist, yes, columnist on navigating a world in which vaccination against COVID-19 is both common and contested. So this person writes on May the 25th that they recently went to their chiropractor and they asked if he had received his COVID vaccine. He said no. He and his assistant do wear masks, but they see patients in a very small room with a closed door. When I asked again several weeks later, he said, well, we have to talk. I'm not going to get the vaccine. Now, this is a physician. Listen to this, a chiropractor. And he says, I don't believe in vaccinations. He goes on to say, my family and I are all healthy and see no need for it. On my way out, I asked his assistant if she had been vaccinated, and she replied, no, and I don't plan to. It's a personal decision. I called the next morning to explain that I wouldn't be coming back to their practice because they weren't vaccinated. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. Miss Darlene says, you're so right. I have at least 4 friends who have died. And that's why I always say if only Cayman had a bad experience, things would be different. I'm telling you, when you understand the reality of death, right? And the possibility that you could prevent death by getting vaccinated. And there are people who say, well, there's a possibility that you might die. The few unexplained deaths that you could say, even if you say, let's link those to COVID vaccine, which the verdict is very much out, right? But let's say that you do link it, right? The percentages of those after 1.5 billion people have been vaccinated versus the people who haven't been vaccinated dying, it's like, it's a humongous, huge difference. So you're willing to take a chance getting COVID, which is fairly common, and dying from that, or having long-term illness, than taking a vaccine and having a very slim chance of having any ill effects from that vaccine in terms of serious ill effects. It doesn't even make any sense. It really doesn't. Esley says that as soon as the vaccine is available for kids, and most of our kids are vaccinated, let us free and open the borders. And if you don't want to get vaccinated, then you do so at your own risk. And, you know, this concept of this is why I want to read a little bit of this article, of this being a one-time thing, like, oh, this is just my decision, it doesn't impact anyone else, is really a false decision. There's nothing in this world that you do that has no trickle-down effect on somebody else, even if it's just your family members, right? Everything you do impacts other people. I can think of few things or few instances of any actions that you can take in life that will only have an impact on you, because you don't live in the world by yourself. This is it. We're creatures that have family members. You have children, you have grandchildren, you have other people. And I even said to someone recently, and the whole India situation is just crazy. But, you know, I even said to someone recently, here's the crazy thing about it, right? You're willing to put your grandchildren, who I know you love immensely, at risk, and other people who cannot get the vaccine, because there's some people who are not eligible for the vaccine. But the idea is, if the rest of us get this immunity and this protection, we help to cushion and protect those people as well. When you don't get it, you make it more likely that the most vulnerable people will get it and will die as a result of that. And yeah, Flashpoint, there's still crazy people out there who claiming that COVID isn't real. I mean, it's just shocking and unbelievable to me. And I think that until people experience it, then perhaps some people will never change their position. As she says, my grandfather died in June of last year from COVID, and 6 of my family members died of COVID. And because of COVID, as some of them were sick and have so many problems to get medical help because everything was closed because of the COVID lockdown. And not just that, Miss Esley, but people will also have long-term, like I said, implications of COVID. So this story goes on because it's so incredibly interesting. After this woman, I don't know if it's a woman or man, but said, I'm not coming back to your office because you're refusing to get vaccinated. So yes, that doctor has a choice. Yep, it's his choice to decide that he doesn't want to get vaccinated and his assistant doesn't want to get vaccinated. Now it's a patient's choice to say, you know what? Because of your decision, this is the trickle-down effect. Because of your decision, I'm not going to come to you. I'm not going to give you my money, and I'm not going to have you put me at risk. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Later that day, the chiropractor called and asked me if I would please respect his privacy, hear the bullshit arguments, and not tell anyone else about his decision not to be vaccinated. Wow, he loses one patient because he refuses to be vaccinated. And all of a sudden, he's calling that one patient and saying, oh, don't tell anybody else. Money. If you really believe in your position of not getting vaccinated, then you should live with the consequences. And let me be very clear. What I'm about to say here is some of those consequences are financial consequences. So as a patient, if I say, and this is such a good question that you should be asking your healthcare providers if you believe in vaccination, if I say, I don't want to go to someone who doesn't get vaccinated, I don't want to take that risk, then that is your choice. Just like they're claiming it's their choice not to take it, it's also your choice to not do business with them. Now imagine this physician is somehow in his twisted logical thinking, already thinking about his coins. He's like, oh, well, don't tell anybody else. No. You're bold enough to make such a decision. You should be bold enough to stick by that decision. What is the problem? You see, this is the duplicity that people love to live by. Double standard is what we call it in the Cayman Islands, right? The double standard is, I'm not going to get vaccinated because, I don't believe in vaccines. But now that I see that one patient went, you don't believe in vaccines? A medical health professional? Okay, fine. You know, all the patient said was, I won't be coming back to you because you don't believe in vaccine. He has the audacity to pick up the phone and ask the patient not to tell anybody else. Are you kidding me? Marshall says you're making an excellent point and highlighting the fact that because Cayman has been spared the devastation of COVID, like many other countries around the world, why people in Cayman are now reluctant to take the vaccine. Maybe if there were more deaths and suffering from COVID, then people would be running to get the vaccine. Yes. Renita says nothing that you do is going to prevent death. You can't cheat it. One way or the other, we're all going to die. Well, yeah, I did say this morning that, nothing lasts forever. But do I want to die at 25, 35, or 40 from COVID versus living to be 65, 75, or 85? I would say I got a lot more living to do. So this isn't about, eventually you're going to die anyway. This is about, I'm not interested in dying from COVID. So anything that I can do to protect myself, whether that meant at the time wearing a mask, respecting the quarantine and the stay in place provisions, whether that meant overwashing my hands so I felt like I was going crazy, pulling children out of school, shutting down the entire country. Those were the things that we did, Renita, to prevent death. And again, this is where we're too comfortable with the idea of death. Until you have multiple people dying around you because of this disease, you wouldn't make that kind of a comment. And I'm sorry to say, had we lost 25% of our population, you couldn't tell me, Renita, that you'd be feeling the same way. Like, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to die anyway. Lose an aunt, lose an uncle. You know what I'm saying? Lose your grandparents prematurely to COVID. And then you have a very different reality. Have the HSA be inundated with COVID patients. Have to set up another off-site facility with nothing but, COVID beds all over the place. If there's a level of lack of reality that we are experiencing here in Cayman, and as a result of that, a bit of an ungratefulness that comes out of that, with us thinking that death is no big deal. People just die every single day. And yes, they do, until it's one of your own that dies. And then you understand the devastation that comes with it. Flashpoint says, I was talking with someone the other day who told me that Bill Gates is behind the vaccine. This is a well-educated individual who should understand the science. It's just crazy out there. It's beyond crazy what we think are intelligent people, otherwise how they think about these sorts of things. The same people, like I said, who've been vaccinated, who haven't died from polio, meningitis, and all the other things that vaccines have helped save millions of people from. Because most of us have never lived through that, I think it's a lot easier as well for our generation to talk about how incredibly fortunate they are, or not even think about how fortunate they are, I should say, when it comes to vaccination, because they don't have the reality of having to experience any of that. The only person that I know that had polio, and I actually didn't even meet her before she died, was my ex's. He had an elder aunt who was in a home, partly because of the fact that the polio caused her, I think, a severe handicap for the rest of her life. So she had to be in a home care facility. Her family couldn't care for her in the US, and they would have to go and visit her. And her entire life was spent in that type of a facility. And it's just, I heard a little bit through the family of some of the things that they had to endure with her polio diagnosis. And then when she eventually died, I mean, she still lived to be, kind of up in age. So she was one of the fortunate ones that wasn't killed because of it. But I think, wow, I don't even know what that is. I had to go look it up. I had to go Google polio. What is polio? Measles, meningitis, like all these things. We don't know what they are. Why? Because of vaccines. Now you have people who've lived an amazing life because of medical science and because of vaccines. And we want to turn around and say that, well, don't get vaccinated, and try to dissuade people. I mean, I had a very educated person yesterday saying that there's somebody else who has dissuaded her from getting it, and this person has a high school education. And the other person that they've dissuaded is educated at the master's degree level. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this work exactly? Where someone who has less education than you, because of their persuasiveness of chatter, is able to persuade you, who's supposed to be the brighter one, the logical thinking one, the one who's done research to get a friggin' master's degree. How does someone else convince you not to get vaccinated? It blows my mind how people can be influenced by other people who shouldn't be influencing them. Let's return to a story in the New York Times. This author writes, I was appalled. Isn't this an unethical request? He's a healthcare provider during a pandemic. Shouldn't his patients be aware that he has chosen not to get a vaccine as recommended by the CDC? Doesn't his personal decision affect others in a potentially dangerous way? By asking me to hide his decision, doesn't he make me an accomplice to his duplicity? So this is someone now writing to the ethics columnist at the New York Times. Name withheld. The response is a number of questions have recently arisen about how we should negotiate a social and professional world in which vaccination against COVID-19 is both common and contested. What's clear is that many people think that getting vaccinated is simply about protecting yourself. And we do not have what a philosopher would call a reason of prudence for getting vaccinated, a reason that's more compelling the older we are. Yet, there's also a public-spirited altruistic reason for getting vaccinated. That there's now bountiful evidence that vaccinated people are much less likely to transmit the virus to others. When masks were first recommended, medical authorities emphasized their benefit not to the wearer, but to others. Listen very, very carefully here. Only after some months and additional studies was it made plain that mask helps protect both parties. It's the opposite story with vaccines. Vaccine approval depended on trials designed to show benefits to recipients. So officials were at first hesitant to say what now is clear, that they help others too. The broader point is one I've made before. When many people accept a small inconvenience like wearing a mask or getting vaccinated, we can achieve something of great value to all. Amazing, right? So clinicians who tell you that vaccination is a personal decision, as if it doesn't affect and therefore concern anybody else, are making an all too common mistake. Your chiropractor thinks the current health of his own family is all that's relevant, because he's not considering that he might infect an elderly stranger and cause her death. One CDC study suggests the majority of COVID cases were transmitted by people who weren't symptomatic at the time. He isn't very likely to do that at work, of course, assuming he's taken the proper precautions, including masking and ensuring proper ventilation in the small room where he works. Even so, his clients would still be safer if he and his assistant were vaccinated. That's why it isn't a personal decision in the intended sense. Getting vaccinated for those without medical contraindications, sorry, it's not contradictions, contraindications. In other words, if you have a medical reason not to get it, is more than a good idea. It's something we owe to one another. It's an act of civic responsibility. And note that the CDC recent at-ease guidance for the vaccinated is predicted on the unvaccinated's maintaining proper vigilance. When an unvaccinated health provider caused an outbreak in a Kentucky nursing facility this March, residents who were vaccinated enjoy a relatively high level of protection, but 18 became infected nonetheless, and one died. The elderly seem at particular risk for breakthrough infections, to be sure. Still, when people choose not to be vaccinated, they've chosen to increase the risk to others. This is the point. So everybody who wants to say it's a personal decision needs to really understand the implications of what it is that they're even claiming. Here's another comment, another response to this question that came in. I should mention that chiropractic has a long association with anti-vaccination sentiments. Its founder, D.D. Palmer, who maintained that his theories were communicated to him by the spirit of a long-deceased physician, rejected the germ theory of disease, which disposed him to being skeptical of vaccination. Although many contemporary chiropractors do believe in vaccines, vaccine skepticism appears to be more common amongst chiropractors than it is in the medical mainstream. Isn't that interesting? Moving from chiropractors' ethics to yours, I point out that he didn't tell you about his decision in confidence, which means that you don't have a duty to respect a later request to stay mum. Why does your chiropractor want you to keep this to yourself? Maybe he thinks that clients might drop him out of an irrational assessment of the risk, and some clients might. And that really is a personal decision. Boom. Mic drop. Isn't that amazing? We want to term certain things personal decisions, but your decision to say, wow, my physician hasn't been vaccinated, and so if I tell other people that, he may not get, or he may lose clients. Well, a client's decision to drop him is actually a personal decision, more than not getting the vaccine. Isn't that ironic? Risa, good morning. She says that dying by COVID is a slow, painful, and lonely death. You basically die with strangers around you, not your family. You don't get to say goodbye, nothing. And again, because we've not experienced that, we don't know. We don't know that. We only, if those of us who watch it get to see it on TV, that's all that we know. So there's something called a COVID long hauler, which again is symptoms and management for people who are suffering from all sorts of things, even a year after getting the virus. So let me just show you guys. And again, we try to educate people in this program. I do feel like it is part of our responsibility here. We might engage in gossip and whatever at times, but folks, you have to know the facts. So yes, I got the first vaccination on Saturday. I have no complaints. I had no symptoms to speak of. Obviously, the injection site, I still am wearing my little Band-Aid, I think. Is it still on? Oh, yeah, there it is. It's still there. And if I touch it, yes, the injection spot is sore, like any other needle that goes into your arm. I mean, it's a needle. So I wasn't lethargic. I wasn't tired. Nothing out of the ordinary, absolutely nothing. I made a point of coming home and not trying to go out there and run a marathon, which I would have done anyway. But yes, I think it's sensible to just maybe take the rest of the day a little bit easy. So I went to the youth parliament, as you guys know, in the morning on Saturday, got the vaccine in the afternoon, got some lunch, got me some nice chicken soup, and everything, came home, watched a movie. The new Cruella movie was out, Cruella, and it's a fantabulous movie. I loved it. I'm going to watch it again. And there are very few movies I watch more than once, but I do want to watch it again. Really, really great movie. My husband and I chilled out on the sofa. We watched that together. My daughter chilled out with us. She got to watch her little shows on her TV. Nothing happened. I went to bed a little bit earlier than usual, so I wasn't up until 2:00. But yeah, that night I was like, you know what? Let me go to bed early. Nothing. Some people after the second jab, so they feel a little bit feverish and other things. So once I do that one, I'll let you guys know. So Zambula says, I used to work in the tourism industry. I'm not taking it, and it shouldn't be a big problem if I don't. My choice. The borders would open eventually, but for how long? Laughing out loud. Every day something new is coming out, my dear. Well, that's unfortunate because you say that the borders are going to open again for how long, as though, we can remain closed. Remaining closed when 30% plus of your GDP comes from tourism just isn't an option. Like, I don't understand why people think, again, a product of our own success, because we're eating into the little surplus that we have. And, the budget, the immediate budget has allowed us to do that. But do you all not remember? This is where people have very selective memory. The previous Minister of Finance, Mr. McTaggart, said himself that the progressives, might have to think about taxing the people of the Cayman Islands in order to pay for what they were giving you at the time in terms of business incentives, not even loans, but just grants and this sort of thing. He said, and then he quickly withdrew it because some of y'all were paying attention. We're like, what? Taxing us? But he said, in order for us to financially recover from what is happening now, you might have to end up paying taxes in the Cayman Islands. So many of you missed it. I'm shocked because the man was speaking the truth, which he quickly retracted. So I'm surprised, Sambula, when you think, oh, what's the big deal? The borders are shut down again. Do you understand the serious implications of keeping your borders closed? Now, y'all are lucky that you have people like Wayne Panton, who is relatively, he's a thinker, and he's going to take his time with making this sort of decision because, right now they're dealing with this is my understanding of what's going on. They're dealing with the industry, the tourism industry sector, to see how to reopen. Because for all of the things that the progressives claim that they were doing, and what a wonderful job that they were doing in terms of with COVID, do you guys know that they had absolutely no, zero, zilch, nada, nothing, say it in as many languages as you possibly can. They had no COVID reopening plan. This is a government who got all their members reelected, not many of the Alliance members, but they got all of their members reelected on the basis that they'd handled the pandemic so well. But the things that they were not telling you, for example, is that they have absolutely no plan in place on how to reopen. So now this government has to figure out how to make that happen. How can you claim you're doing such a great job at handling COVID when you didn't even have a reopening plan in place? Y'all listening to what I'm saying to you? Are you paying close attention? I feel like I need to do a special editorial on this, because although I'm saying this right now, and there's 262 of you watching, I feel like this is going to be a point that is largely missed by the general population. What I just said, folks, is that they had no reopening plan. They had not even been engaging with industry stakeholders, the Cayman Islands Tourism Association, Chamber, all others, on how are we going to reopen our borders. Nobody ain't got a clue. And so now the mad rush is on to try to get said plan in place. And they did such a wonderful job handling COVID. That's what they want us to believe. Zambula, our borders cannot remain closed forever unless you want to end up like Brazil. Total devastation. Like India, total devastation. Economic collapse. The financial services industry cannot carry the weight of people in tourism. Those people can't work in that sector. And even in that sector, we have seen some job losses already occurring. The world economy has been impacted by COVID. So let's get a little bit of a reality check here, folks. Thank you, Charm. Says why some people are holding back is because polio, tetanus, and smallpox vaccines took years of research. The COVID vaccine got emergency approval in months. How many years did it take for the polio vaccine? How many years did it take for tetanus and smallpox? I'm just saying. There's that assumption, but how many of you have actually done the research to know how long it took to develop those vaccines? You just say that because that's what they say. But you've never done the research on your own to say, wow, was it a year? Because it took a year for COVID vaccine. I mean, they started working it pretty early on. And the other thing about that is highly inaccurate, Charm, is that what these anti-vaxxers don't tell you is the COVID vaccine was built and developed on an existing vaccine that they had been working on for other forms of SARS and so forth. They didn't start from scratch. So they started from a baseline of already having, it wasn't specific for this purpose, obviously, but already having this vaccine in the works. And that's where, again, you need to learn about the history of this vaccine and how it came about. So that's an easy conversation or an easy way to try to dissuade people from getting the vaccine. Oh, they just threw this together. Not quite. They'd actually been working for years on the foundation that now the COVID vaccine is built on. Does that change the argument? Does that change your minds? But it's a fact. So that isn't an accurate statement either. Darlene says, Sandy, it's almost mind-blowing to speak that it is not real. I can only imagine what would have happened. It would or could have wiped us out. Also, Sandy, what happened when we were children in school and had to take vaccine and boosters? I don't wait to get my jab once it was offered. Yeah, it's crazy. Irvin says that guy shouldn't be practicing. Well, I guess if he loses enough patience because of his position, then maybe he won't be. And it got me to thinking as well that I'm going to start asking my providers if they're vaccinated. Because who knows? We might have providers here in Cayman who are refusing to get vaccinated. Ashley says that her grandfather died in December last year, and I could not go and see her for the last time. So I've lost 2 of grandparents in 1 year, and I could not say goodbye to them because of COVID, and CI borders are closed. And people in Cayman have the vaccine here for free and refuse to get it. Shameless. It really is shameless. And it's shameless when people say, oh, well, just suck it up Esley, they're going to die anyway. Can you believe it? I don't know how old your grandparents are, and please accept my condolences, but I'm sure they had a lot of life left in them, and they probably could have lived another 15, 20 years perhaps. It's easy for people to be dismissive when they themselves have not experienced the loss, such as you, Esley, 2 grandparents in 1 year. What are the chances of that, Renita? I mean, I know you said everybody's going to die, but what are the chances of you losing 2 grandparents in 1 year because of one illness? You answer that and then say that to me again. Say that to Esley, who has had 6 people in her family who have had COVID. Just say to her, oh, well, they're going to die anyway, so don't worry about it. It's shocking how people can be so dismissive of something that is incredibly serious. Ms. Darlene said just today here in the UK, they're saying the government is anticipating if all NHS workers should be jabbed in order to continue their duties. I think it should be a requirement of employment if you work for government facilities such as in a medical profession. If you don't want to get the jab, then your personal choice is to leave the profession or go work in private sector where you may not have that requirement. I do believe that there comes a point in time where we're going to make certain things mandatory. Right now in the Cayman Islands, you cannot have a child and refuse to get that child vaccinated and hope to be able to put that child in any public school or anything else. Vaccination in this country, other than COVID, is pretty much mandatory. And by and large, we have a very good percentage of people. I'm sure the vast majority of people are getting it. Because they're not going to allow you to put other children at risk because you don't want to get your children vaccinated. Ruthlyn Pomares, who is a physician, says, FYI, chiropractors are not medical doctors. And it doesn't surprise me, Dr. Pomares, knowing that as well. It does not surprise me that they are one of the quasi medical professions, because there's lots of them out there, who don't believe, generally speaking, in vaccinations. That you're more likely to have someone who is a chiropractor be a person who is an anti-vaxxer as well. That doesn't surprise me in the least bit. In fact, I would expect that, to be quite frank. And Lori makes the point that they do have physical contact with people as well. Elizabeth says, thank God I got both of my shots, not just for me, but for others. We are blessed to have this vaccine. My son took his also, and I never had to ask him. He just went and did the responsible thing. I was glad because he's asthmatic. Vaccines didn't give us no side effects. We were in order taking it from time it's available. Please, people, please save the life of yourself and others who come this far. Let's continue to help each other by taking the vaccine. Think about our elders or children if this virus got out of control. And here's the other thing as well. You didn't have a choice at the stay-at-home provisions when we went into lockdown. You certainly didn't have a choice to wear your mask. It was a criminal offense to wear your mask out in public, right? All the quarantine and lockdown provisions that we had, you did not have a choice. Is that how we're thinking your permanent life should be? Being in lockdown, if we have another transmission, another outbreak, and you're okay with not having a choice with those things, but getting the vaccine is going to be my personal choice. While the rest of us have to all suffer mentally, physically, and otherwise going back into lockdown. I mean, it is crazy the logic in my mind that people use. Sue says, so true. Thousands of people line up in the rain, cold to get the vaccine drive for miles. And we're so lucky here, and it's been so easy. Marshall has done the Moderna shot. No side effects from either one. Actually, there were 2. There's both the AstraZeneca. There's a small shipment of that came in, and the Pfizer BioNTech. So, Darlene says to say that we should continue to close the borders, in my opinion, is being selfish, period. Not only is it being selfish, but it's being unrealistic. So Denny says, so Roy McTaggart spoke the truth about taxation and retracted it. Yes, he did. Yep, because it was unpopular, as the truth often is. The truth doesn't get you any friends, folks. I'm telling you, take it from me. You get up and you speak the truth. You can't be in it to get people to like you. You know, that's not what truth telling is about. And so, yes, he got an immediate backlash of people talking, oh my God, the T word? It's the worst word in the vocabulary here in the Cayman Islands. But he was being entirely truthful. That's a T word too, truthful. And yes, he retracted it. CE banks, that's a fact. No reopening plan. But yet, they ran an entire campaign on how well they did. And so many people were fooled and put them right back in. Heaven forbid they had taken the leadership of this country. Y'all would know what's really up. Anything from MP Bryan about increasing and extending the tourism? We have not heard anything as yet. But again, I hope that you guys just heard me when I said the country is on the verge of being broke. So you pay for it now. Where are you getting it from later? You, the people, will ultimately pay for it later. You're kicking the can down the street. Do you really want the tourism stipend to be increased? And then you're going to have to pay taxes, you, your grandchildren, and everybody else? Well, that's what's coming. Don't be fooled. You don't get anything in life for free. Not even your government can give you money for free. You understand what I'm telling you? There will be a price to pay, and you'll pay it. James says because of the new COVID variants, potentially require people to get annual booster vaccines indefinitely. So the research is still out, James, but that is certainly a possibility. It looks like, based on what they're saying, is that the vaccination gives you at least a year's worth of protection. Now I saw something over the weekend that's actually saying that new research has come out that looks like it goes beyond the year of protection. So yes, there's still a lot of unknowns about COVID in general, just like there are some potential unknowns about the vaccine. But when we say to you that this is your only hope, right? Trying to get back to some semblance of normalcy. There will be no life, folks, how it used to be before COVID. We will never return to those days. Anybody else who's telling you that is also lying to you. So if one thing we're going to do here today is we're going to tell you the truth. So without a doubt, life will never be the same again. Worldwide. And to be quite frank, it is what it is. There's some companies in the US and elsewhere who are mandating that people who work for them get COVID vaccinations. That has led to some people already starting in the US to test legally the waters. And so they're suing people left, right, and center. They'll go all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will make the legal decision whether or not your employer will be able to tell you if you must get vaccinated. Again, it's not about you. It is a public safety concern. And I could see, especially in certain professions, why it would be a requirement. And the short of it is, if you don't want to meet the requirement of that job, just like if the job says it's a requirement for you to have a certain degree and you don't have the degree, you're not getting the job in the first place. So I do think that at some point, you have got to understand that, yes, there might be schools that will say, well, if you're not vaccinated and you want to come back to university, that's not going to be possible. You have to continue distance learning through Zoom or whatever other method they're using. There will be requirements in place, just like anything else in life, right? Tracy says we have the opportunity to make history and be the first herd country in the Caribbean. Cayman first, let's do this to protect ourselves and each other. You have no idea how fortunate you are having access to the vaccine that many others would do anything to be in that position. Good morning, Mitzi. Denny, that we do not know with certainty. So there's a lot of things that we don't know with certainty, and there is nothing wrong with saying you don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like the research is still out. Even with medicines that have been around for years, they get recalled. Oh, we've just discovered now that this medicine is having this adverse effect because after 10 years of research, we're realizing it's killing people. But guess what? Millions of people have been taking it. So sometimes in terms of the research that comes in on medications, on vaccines, etc., it is a little bit real time. And this is probably in our lifetime for sure, the first real-time analysis that we have had of any sort of a virus as well as a vaccination that has been deployed. Again, I'm 47 years old. I know nothing about any other vaccination that has been deployed in my lifetime. Do you? No. So how was polio vaccine deployed? You don't know because you weren't around. You understand what I'm saying? Did they make it mandatory? You better believe. Were people able to go out and about and incentivize people? Well, back then they didn't have news 24/7. They didn't have the cold hard truth. Everybody wasn't on the internet exploring all their options and talking 24/7, spreading good information as well as misinformation. So the world has changed significantly since the deployment of any major vaccination program. In fact, as you will recall, during COVID, I said that the previous president of the United States, Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, had dismantled, took it apart, the vaccination center in the US, that their specific job was to trace the efficacy, effectiveness of vaccines once they were deployed. Of course, in his little head, he could think that that was a good idea to dismantle them because he's thinking, when are we going to ever need to deploy a vaccine? Even in his lifetime, what is he, 70-something years old? He probably has no recollection of any vaccine program. But that organization played a very important role, not just in keeping up with existing vaccinations, such as polio and all these other ones that are already out there, but any new ones that could come on board. But poor Trump, one thing he lacked was foresight. And none of us saw this coming, so I'll give him that. And months later, after he dismantles the special unit of the CDC that had the resources, did a wonderful job of tracking the responses that people had to vaccines, the whole 9 yards, he dismantles the whole thing very, very silently. And then poof, this happens. And this is when you actually need that unit back. Now, I don't know if Biden has had a chance to put that unit back together or what the heck he has done, but these are the realities of what we're living with, folks. We're able to feel comfortable because we have no knowledge and experience with vaccines, other than we all got the jab as babies, and it has offered us immense protection. Do you know that there's been a couple Caymanians that have died from viral meningitis? I remember a case some years ago, a young man went off to university, college, whatever, because apparently colleges are a place that you can really get it quite easily, being in such close quarters with other people. And I thought, what the heck is viral meningitis? What is meningitis? There's so many things that we don't even know anymore because we've been so incredibly fortunate in this part of the world. Not even to have to live with, what are these things called? Hold on. You know that show, The Monster Inside Me? Oh, I'm obsessed with that program. Let me tell you now. This is all about people who get parasites, right? And it's so shocking to me. It's one of my favorite shows. I don't even know if it's still in production. It might be. But boy, I love me that show. It's on the Animal Planet. And it talks about parasitic infections and stuff all the time, right? So we always think that people have to go to some far off places in the world to get a parasite and die. And then you hear things like the bot fly being common in some countries, right, that we're right surrounded by. There was an outbreak years ago in Jamaica. It was a wedding party that went to a resort, and a number of people in the wedding party, and I think the groom and bride, or at least one of them, maybe it was just a groom, I don't know, also died from the one with the snail. I forget what it's called now. If you guys are any medical people here who can help me. But it's the one where snail will get on things like lettuce and they'll defecate on it. And if you don't wash it properly and you digest that, it will kill you. And so they had several people in the wedding party who ended up dying from this parasitic infection. And we think we're so far removed from it. Yes, that doesn't happen often anymore. Again, because people know how to protect themselves. But one little mishap of not washing your fresh fruits and vegetables can land you dead. And thank God for things like powerful antibiotics and medicine that even once they find out what you have, a lot of times they can save you. Courtney, thank you so much for tuning into the program. Mr. Courtney says, your attention to the truth has won me over. Truth wins more real friends than lies and flattery while weeding out the riffraff. Well, I guess at the end of the day, my point about the truth is you can't be in the truth-telling business for the purpose of winning friends, because you probably lose more people than you win. Miss Sue says, yes, even the UK people getting all that furlough money until September won't go back to work in the restaurants or bars. So as they open up more, some have no staff. They had to close. It's ridiculous. Wow, people getting used to freeness. They perceive it as free, but they'll so know it ain't free. It's just ridiculous. Laziness. People want to sit home and get money from government. Get your behinds back to work. Free? Nothing in life is free. There's a cost to be paid for everything. NAU, someone mentioned NAU before. The people who are at NAU, you think NAU is free? No, you have the luxury, those of you in NAU, of not paying for it directly, but all the rest of us are paying for it. You see? That's the high cost of living in the Cayman Islands. You complain and moan and bitch about that, not realizing that part of the reason why that exists is because we do have no taxation system, but these things still have to be paid for. So every time you go in and get a free thing that you don't really need or that you can work, yes, honey child, somebody has to pay for that. And it's normally the hardworking people who get up every single day and who do the things that they're supposed to do. Miss Darlene says that she had a dear cousin who died from meningitis whilst in university. So that's why I always say, a lot of people are like, oh, you should run for politics. Listen, politicians and truth telling don't normally go hand in hand, because they're trying to keep you, the voters, like you saw what I said with Mr. Matt Taggart. He had a moment of truth. You guys are going to be taxed. And how quickly did he withdraw that? Real fast. So politicians don't have the luxury of being able to tell you the truth, unfortunately, because they are afraid. They're afraid that they tell you the truth and you don't like it, you're not going to vote for them. So I always figure that there's at least one or two or a couple handful of people in your community who need to have unfeathered, no restraints ability to just tell you like it is, whether you like it or not. Let's have a look at this other video. As we know, sometimes here in the program, it takes on a life of its own. My intent was not to spend all this time talking about COVID, but as it turns out, perhaps we just needed to have this conversation. Thank you, Miss Anne. How are you doing in quarantine? I can't believe that people don't want to go back to work. The ultimate in laziness, folks. Wow. They've gotten so used to government handouts. No, sir.
3 months ago, CNBC's Andrea Day spoke to 3 long haulers. Tonight, she's checking back in to see how they're doing.
All I'm ready to go.
Tyson Wrench is leaving Las Vegas,
A little breakfast before we take off.
heading to New York City. More than a year now since he had COVID, and he's still dealing with the pain.
Coming into New York.
I have this stomach ache 24 hours a day, and it's just a constant reminder that this is something still going on inside of me.
He brought us along to see his doctor at Mount Sinai Center for Post-COVID Care.
Just got through the health screening.
It's one of the first clinics in the country to treat patients with lingering symptoms long after the virus is gone.
How are you?
Hello.
We first met Tyson last year after COVID left the 47-year-old foodie struggling to eat.
It's gonna hurt, but I will eat it.
I would spend mornings doubled over in bed just with a horrible stomach ache.
Today, he's no longer doubled over in pain, but he's nowhere near back to normal.
It's the feeling like I had a huge meal and went to bed and it didn't digest. It's horrible. My wish is that I would just be hungry again.
Diane Washington had COVID 8 months ago.
So this is my sleep couch.
When we first met Diane, just walking up the stairs was almost impossible. Today, she's making it up on good days.
I don't count on every day being able to go upstairs.
And still dealing with a list of symptoms.
I still have a hard time breathing. I still use oxygen at night. I still get tired. I still have brain fog.
How close are you right now to your normal self?
I'm nowhere close to my normal self. I'm far from it.
This is where I spent the last year of my life. This couch and these chairs.
Before COVID, she ran marathons, training 10 miles a day. But when we first met Katie Barber, 10 months after she tested positive, the 27-year-old was in such bad shape, she had to be carried from room to room.
Sitting next to the toilet because I'm nauseous.
There was one night that I actually thought that I was going to die and I was having convulsions on the ground.
Today, she's still not running, but she's now walking on her own.
Oh, it's incredible. We had to retrain my body how to walk again. I have a few symptoms, but overall, so much better than I was.
We checked back in with Mount Sinai's Dr. Zijin Chen.
What is the one thing that's baffling you right now?
I think the most baffling thing right now are still the symptoms. The unifying link, the one thing that, causes all of the symptoms to happen because of one virus is, a little elusive.
But he says there's finally some good news to report.
Over time, we're seeing many of our patients getting closer to normal. And our hope is that we can get everybody there.
And Shep, I asked Dr. Chen if the vaccine is helping some of those long haulers turn the corner. He says he doesn't know why some may feel better after getting that vaccine. There's just not enough data right now, so the jury's still out. Shep?
Andrea, thank you.
So again, lots of unexplained in terms of this virus and still not enough data. But those people who now have to live with what looks like could be lifelong implications of having contracted coronavirus, despite the fact that they've survived it, will probably tell you that had a vaccine been available to them before they got the infection, they would have taken it. Now they're going to live with that poor woman. She can never run again. I'm not a runner, so running is not something I would ever miss. But I know people who are runners, and they will tell you the inability for them to get up in the mornings and go for a run or run whenever they want is almost like a death sentence. Because that's their passion. That's what they love. That's what makes them feel good. But it's not just about being able to run, being able to barely walk, having chronic gastro discomfort. Let's look at some of the long haul symptoms, actually, that people are experiencing. This long hauling is what they're calling it. Right? So we know that some people have memory loss that they're now saying is akin to Alzheimer's kind of thing. That's crazy. But that's the reality. Let me see if we've got a list here of a comprehensive list of what they know so far. And again, a lot of this is still, the verdict is still out. right? The verdict is still very much out on how long some of these things will last for, but they say it's long haul, long COVID. So everything from just being able to manage their finances, take part in social activities, make decisions, light physical activities become stressful. Housework, driving, making a phone call can leave them feeling exhausted and aching. Being forgetful, finding it difficult to concentrate on simple tasks, feel like you're unable to think straight. They talk about this fogginess that they go into, their head being clouded. They can't do simple calculations. They can't find the right word to say. Changes in moods, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. So right now, they're not even sure how common this long COVID is, but estimates are anywhere from 10 to 60% or more of COVID-19 patients will be affected by lingering symptoms such as fatigue, sleep problems, and mood changes. So again, when someone says, oh, I took the COVID shot, the vaccine shot, and for 2 days I was not well, and for 2 days I was feverish, whatever, I say, okay, let me think about that in my head for a minute. 2 days of having a little bit of an adverse but expected response to the COVID vaccine versus a year plus, could be a lifetime of all of this other stuff. Are you kidding me? Even those people who were not hospitalized and experienced only mild coronavirus symptoms have experienced long COVID. Up to a third, this is what the early research is showing. The most startling research has suggested that up to 1/3 of COVID-19 survivors are likely to suffer neurological or mental health problems within 6 months, ranging from mood disorders to dementia or stroke. A third. Let's stop there again. Talk about vaccine efficacy. We're not saying that about the vaccine, right? So again, people keep sending me these. I get it on WhatsApp all the time. Or read this article. They're saying that maybe 1,200 people worldwide have died because of COVID. 1,200 people out of 1.5 billion that have been vaccinated. Okay. And somehow in your head, that's a logical argument to bring to me, because I don't even know why they sent it to me, to be honest. I'm like, what? A third of COVID survivors are likely to suffer neurological or mental health problems, including mood disorders, dementia, and stroke. And you're still talking about the vaccine doing something to you? Like, are you serious? Shocking. Physical symptoms: fatigue, muscle aches, weakness, chest pain and heart palpitations, headache, shortness of breath, joint pain, rash or hair loss, intermittent fever, cough. These are some of the long haul COVID symptoms, folks. Mental or neurological symptoms: memory and concentration problems, difficulty thinking straight. They're calling it brain or COVID fog. Sleep disruption, ranging from sleeping too much to insomnia. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, changes in mood, extreme emotions, altered smell and taste. Remember how they were saying that a lot of COVID people lose their sense of smell and taste completely. Causes of long-term COVID, again, post-viral conditions are apparently not unusual, with some viral infections having long-lasting effects. For example, meningitis and glandular fever can trigger chronic fatigue syndrome. The 1918 flu pandemic was linked to causes of encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain, while the 2003 outbreak of SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, left many patients suffering from flu-like symptoms similar to those of long-haul COVID. So they think that some of the contributing factors could be inflammation of the brain or immune system caused by the virus, a reduced or absent response from your immune system's antibodies, experiencing a relapse or a reinfection of the coronavirus, possible, trauma following the stress of hospitalization or intensive treatment, deconditioning or decline in your physical health following the period of bed rest and inactivity whilst infected with COVID-19, and damage to the immune system, lungs, or other organs caused by the virus or low oxygen levels. So this is a long-term prognosis for a lot of people who have been infected with this virus. Again, we remain, Abigail, I cannot believe that there's still people talking about this virus is fake. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. We remain in a comfortable bubble. And what I want to say to you is, I did my part on Saturday. That's the first step. I went and got my first shot. And I encourage all of you, talk to your medical professionals. Hopefully you don't have any of those that are anti-vaxxers. But I think most understand the importance of all of us doing our part. Our country, the world has to get back to some degree of normalcy. There's some people who are like, well, I hear there's another virus that's coming around the corner, so I'm not going to protect myself against this one. Again, how illogical is that? There's always something around the corner. That's like me saying, I'm not going to put on my seatbelt and protect myself from an accident right now, because 10 minutes later, I may have another accident. That's stupid. It's stupid, and it makes no sense whatsoever. People, I hate to tell you to think logically, but that's the takeaway from today's message. Try to think logically and really question yourself when you're falling into a trap of wanting to believe everything that someone says to you or accepting these positions just because, as human beings, I think by default, we are not the most logical thinkers anyway. I remember years ago, I did a course in university at USF in logic. And oh my God, during this course, I'm like, damn, I am not the most logical thinking person at all. Just how you come to certain conclusions. Logic is an entire field of science, believe it or not. And most of us are not into it at that level. But as them old people say, most of us not even got a common sense that comes with a little bit of logic. We're skipping it completely. Oh yeah, something else is coming down the line. Yes, something is always coming down the line. But that doesn't mean that you don't protect yourself now. You get up every day and you do certain things to protect yourself. You wear your seatbelt. You brush your teeth to try to prevent cavities and gum disease and other things. You can't say, well, I'm going to lose a tooth at some point. Okay. There are people who might go an entire lifetime and never lose a tooth until the day that they die. And that's because they've engaged consistently in good oral hygiene or preventative measures, going to the dentist, getting regular routine cleanings, fixing issues as they come up. We need to do better. And I'm really hoping that those of you who are sitting on the fence for no real reason will go out there and get your vaccine. You owe it to yourself. So whilst you're talking about this is a personal decision, you owe it to yourself to not have to be in this position where, your decision, whether you think it's personal or not, could cause other people around you to get sick and potentially die, including the people that you love the most. So CE Bank says, thanks to the previous government for getting your finances in order. And by the way, CE Banks, if you think that financial restrictions are not going to be coming down the pipeline, similar to what happened the previous term, not the term we were just coming out of, but the term before that, 2003 elections. 2003, 2000. Yes, I think it was 2013. Sorry. You got another thing coming. As a result of our position, there will be fiscal implications from the UK in terms of spending. The civil service has been protected. All of you civil servants talking about, oh, you're not going to get the vaccine. Do you know why you still have a job? Do you know the likelihood of the government being able to maintain you at your salaries and so forth? You might be getting a little bit of an awakening. They will do everything in their power, I'm sure of it, to not get there. But capital projects, there'll be a spending cap on those now. Capital projects that could potentially create new jobs or keep some of you employed might not be happening. The truth that not a whole lot of politicians want to have that conversation with you is what's going on. Folks, we are out of time, but I do want to remind you that later on this afternoon, I think it's at 3:00, there is going to be a press conference with the governor at 3 p.m. Domestic Election Observer Team will be given their report on the 2021 general election. So the head of the mission, Mr. Hadley Roberts, who's the domestic election observer, part of the observation team, along with other members of his team, including Mr. Oliver Watler, Margot Lares Alfonso, Ian Wantong, and Trickett, I think that's how they pronounce it, Young, who were all part of the domestic election observer team. They will be presenting their report on what they found during the April the 14th general election. So tune in for that. On tomorrow's program, following up from that, we will have Mr. Alec Lindsay on the program talking about both the finances of the election campaign, now that that report came out late last week, and also the things that the observers may have made in today's report to the country. All right, CE Banks, Denny, thank you guys all so much. Miss Marjorie, they're forcing their government to take other measures. People go get the jab. Well, I think other measures realistically are coming regardless, but we will certainly soften the blow if we can move to reopening. We've been shut down now for over a year. In this position, I think we should all understand after today's program is completely unattainable. Unattainable, is that the word I'm looking for? It can't continue, is basically what I'm trying to say. And so, yes, I would encourage all of you to absolutely do the right thing. I appreciate you tuning into the program today, folks. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Again, here is the vaccine schedule. You do have until the 9th to get your first jab. After that, it's too late. We don't know when the next vaccine's coming. I heard people talking, yeah, I'm going to wait till the next one. Which next one? You don't know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen. And I would certainly encourage you to not delay. There's nothing that's going to happen between now and the next vaccine batch, if one does come, that is going to make you change your mind. So that's just a convenient excuse for you to do nothing. The other reminder, of course, is that if we do not use what we have less of an argument to go to the UK with as to why we need more of a supply. Because they're going to say you're wasting vaccine that's precious. The people all over the world actually would love to have right now. And then you want to come back making some sort of illogical argument that you need more. I'm pretty sure they're going to tell us that we are crazy. Folks, we'll see you tomorrow.
Miracle Brokers International is Cayman's premier source for all your packing, moving, and logistics needs. Whether it's moving a baby grand piano for a concert or moving halfway around the world, we have you covered with our team of local and international experts. MBI has over 30 years of industry experience and are able to get the job done for you right the first time. Contact us today for all your packing, moving, shipping, and logistics needs at 949-5989 or email info@miraclebrokers.com. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.